because 3 years ago you said that another Scottish referendum could only be justified if there was, quote, significant and material change. And one of the examples you gave was Scotland being taken out of the EU. But if you get your second Brexit referendum and we don't leave, you don't have your material change.
Well, you've actually, I think, just in the way you asked me that question, demonstrated part of the answer to it. One of the examples that we put forward was being taken out of the EU.
I said that.
But over the past, exactly, so not the only...
But if you don't get taken out, if you win the second Brexit referendum, we don't leave,
the proposition
what's the material change?
The material change, frankly, is the way in which Scotland has had it completely demonstrated to over the past 3 years that our views and our voice doesn't matter.
You've always said that.
Well,
You've always told us Westminster's horrible.
And it's always been true.
Right, so you knew that in 2016, but you didn't make that a condition of a new referendum.
So since 2016 and since we did this interview in the 2017 election, I've tried very hard on behalf of people across Scotland to compromise. I was prepared to find a compromise around staying in the single market and the customs union. We've sought to influence the direction of the negotiations. We've been treated with contempt, disinterest all along the way. Now, the point is, I do hope there is a second EU referendum for the whole of the UK to escape Brexit, but there is no guarantee in that Scotland ends up in that position.
But if we do stay in the EU, against the odds perhaps, if we do, you've lost your material change. You also said there had to be clear and sustained evidence on opinion polls, not a couple of opinion polls, that Scotland wanted independence. You don't have that. Neither of the conditions you laid down for a second referendum in Scotland might be met.
We're in an election. I'll publish a manifesto later this week, and that will set out very clearly the proposition I'm seeking support for in this election. Because, you know, the scenario you've just painted for me there, if that happens, there is still no guarantee. I mean, Nigel Farage and the Brexiteers are not going to go. This is going to dominate Westminster politics for a long, long time to come. And Scotland has had it demonstrated to it beyond any doubt over the past 3 years that right now our future path as a country is not in our own hands. It's in the hands of Westminster politicians like Boris Johnson with his strings being pulled by Nigel Farage. I think it is time for people in Scotland to have a choice about whether that's the kind of future we want, or instead do we want to have a different kind of future, one that we determine ourselves.
You see, you laid down clear conditions 3 years ago for the second Scottish referendum.
Going on about love.
And if they're
she
not
wants
met,
independence, that's why.
And one of them hasn't been met on the opinion polls, the other one might not be with a second Brexit referendum.
Actually,
you say, I'll just come up with some more reasons for a second referendum. It doesn't mean anything.
Firstly, 3 years ago is a long time. It feels a lot longer, I have to tell you. But you put to me there one of the conditions about increased support for, in most of the polls, almost all of opinion polls show increasing support for independence. They show increasing support for a second...
They do not show clear and sustained evidence that a majority of Scots favour independence. Your words.
Well, you're quoting different things to me here. I stood on a manifesto. I'm standing on a manifesto in this election, and I'm putting to the people of Scotland a proposition that all of the experience of the last 3 years says that we should take our future into our own hands. Now, Scotland might choose independence. I believe it will if it's given the chance again. But whatever future Scotland chooses in that regard, it should be ours to choose. It shouldn't be dictated to us.
Suppose we leave, the United Kingdom leaves the EU in 2020, and you get your second Scottish referendum. Maybe not to 2021, but you get it, and you win. How long before Scotland could rejoin the EU?
Well, I'm not going to give you a specific timescale for that, Ryan.
Give me a ballpark.
In all of my experience of discussions with different interests in the European Union, I think that could be relatively quick. But that will depend on the discussions we have. We understand the conditions we would require to meet and the discussions that would require to take place. But, if we're in a position of Scotland being taken out of the European Union, then we will be seeking a way back in. There will be other options for Scotland. There will be other options for Scotland in the interim, for example.
You said relatively quick. That's not what the SNP's own Growth Commission says. It says it could take up to 10 years.
Look,
at least 5 and up to 10.
I'm not entirely sure what bit of the Growth Commission you're quoting to me there.
Well, I tell you, it says that to join, Scotland would have to create its own stable currency. That would take between 5 and 10
with the greatest respect, Andrew, I don't think, because that is not a requirement necessarily of joining the European Union. What you're quoting to me there...
Yes, it is. You have to have your own currency.
No,
it has to be stable.
That is not true.